collaboration with the Cyprus Mail. This is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Charalambous.
Coming up on the programme this week, is commerce more important than our natural heritage? Environmentalists say they fear for the future of the Akrotiri Peninsula.
So essentially we are seeing the whole Akrotiri Peninsula, which is the most important wetland on the island and one of the most important bird areas. We are seeing it being fragmented or degraded with all these plants.
The Cyprus Computer Society is looking for hackers aged between 14 and 25.
How well they can penetrate a website, how well they can penetrate a Windows system or a server or any kind of system that a hacker may be interested.
And we meet an expert from the Council of Europe who was in Cyprus this week to address a high-level conference on cybercrime.
That puts together minimum standards on criminalizing a specific conduct, which is cybercrime, which puts together a list of procedural powers that the law enforcement needs for effective investigation of cybercrime, and of course a list of international cooperation tools, because cybercrime by its nature is transborder, so international cooperation is almost always a must in investigation. Either the perpetrator in a different country or the victims of the infrastructure or the data.
You may recall that a couple of weeks ago on the programme, we spoke to representatives of BirdLife Cyprus and Terra Cypria about the reasoned opinion that the EU had sent Cyprus on the lack of proper environmental impact assessments. Now, since then, we've also had the groundbreaking of the big casino complex in Limassol. Well, during that ceremony, it was said that a lot of good things were going to come from the casino, but it wasn't mentioned that in actual fact there has not been a proper environmental impact study. At least so say BirdLife Cyprus, whose campaign manager, Tassos Shalis, joins us now. So Tassos, what exactly is it that hasn't been done that you think should have been done before they actually did the groundbreaking to start building?
Essentially, Rosie, what has happened is that the EIA assessment, the environmental impact assessment, was put forward to the Environment Department to be assessed, to be examined, and through that process that happened in May, everyone, or at least BirdLife Cyprus for sure, recognized that it's an inadequate assessment from the consultants who are hired from the development company to carry it out.
Hang on a minute. When you do an environmental impact assessment, surely it should be an independent body that does it, and therefore you can be pretty sure that it is a proper assessment.
You are very right about that, and this is an issue that we've been discussing and raising for many years, that these studies should not be paid by the applicant of any development or plan or project to be carried out. It should have been an independent body, and for many years we've been saying that a separate fund should be created where the consultants doing the study are not related to the company or the private person that wants to do that project.
But we have the technical chamber. Why aren't they just automatically tasked with something like this?
It's a very good suggestion, but at the moment, unfortunately, is still this link between the consultants and anyone who is proposing to build something.
So hang on a minute. I'm a developer. I put in an application for a development somewhere, and the government comes back to me and says, we need an environmental impact assessment, because this is the law. And I say, OK, no problem, I'll get it done. And I come to you, who's my friend, and presumably does have some qualifications to do this, and you do it, but you do it so that it suits me because I'm paying you. Is that what happens?
Exactly, spot on. This is, we've seen so many cases where basically you are almost giving a favor to the applicant because he's paying you by saying what you want him to say. So, yeah, you've put it very correctly that many times the conclusions of the studies, they might say, we have assessed it, we haven't found important bird species or important flora or fauna, and we think there will be no adverse impacts on the environment. The latest example is the casino, where the EIA study was done, despite the fact that they have done no cumulative assessment of the impacts of the area, they have not done proper bird monitoring, they have not assessed the impacts on some important bird species like the red-footed falcon, they have not mentioned the fact that we are losing very good irrigated agricultural land, they have not adequately discussed on the mosquito, many multiple issues they have been inadequately addressed in the study, but the ending conclusion of the consultants was there is no adverse effects on the environment. And we are wondering as BirdLife Cyprus, how can this be the ending conclusion? And logically a person would wonder about its credibility and question it.
But surely the Agriculture Ministry, the Environment Ministry, I mean they cover both of them, they have to look at this impact assessment. Don't they have a say in this?
Yes, of course. They are part of the committee, the different government departments, and then non-government organizations like ourselves are invited, and also some other technocrats are part of that committee. But if we want to be honest about it, the political pressure for such big development projects like the casino filtered down to the technocrats, essentially, and unfortunately, and many times the EIA committee is faced with an already made decision. The perfect example is the casino. It was pre-agreed that this is a position we will put the casino regardless of its environmental impacts. And the study itself didn't even recognize these impacts, so we never even talked about mitigation or compensation measures. Because in many cases you can say, okay, this plan or project has to be here for this and this and this reason, for public interest, for safety reason, whatever. If there's no alternative solutions or locations, then you at least start discussing about compensation or mitigation measures, what you can do to reduce those impacts. But in this case, the EIA study concluded by saying there is no impacts.
So they don't have to make any compensatory moves or whatever?
Exactly. They don't have to do anything, basically, because the consultants are saying it's all fine, it's a closed system, we will have no issue, there's no important bird life or no important wildlife there.
You mentioned mosquitoes. Now we're talking, for those who aren't familiar with the area, of a wetland on the Akrotiri Peninsula that I'm pretty sure I'm right in saying has always had a mosquito problem. At the moment it's dealt with, I think, by the British bases. Let's examine that a little bit, because if they're building a casino in an area where there's a mosquito problem, and my understanding from the past is that it's a big problem, how are they going to attract people to the casino if there's mosquitoes everywhere? And how, if that is a problem, are they going to deal with it? As far as I'm aware, the basis tries to use sort of bio-friendly methods to control the mosquitoes. You know more about this. Tell me if I'm even close to right.
You are very close to right in terms of what the SPAs are doing. They have an extensive program across the peninsula to tackle the problem of the mosquitoes. Because it's a wetland, and the salt marsh and the Akrotiri Peninsula, they are only allowed to use certain biological control methods for the larvicides. So they are using stuff to tackle the larvae, not the adult, which is the mosquito that we see. And essentially, they are doing it all across the peninsula, and still we have complaints from the local communities, which are almost 5 to even 10 kilometers away from the areas they are treating, of complaints. So essentially now what's happening, although we have an extensive program, and speaking with mosquito experts, they've told us it's not because you will suddenly increase by double the dose of larvicide you're putting, you will reduce the population of the mosquitoes. You might actually have the opposite effects, because you're bringing a huge city and you're introducing it in a very close wetland area and where there is a mosquito problem. So it would have probably the opposite effect of reducing the problem, since you are providing food, because the clients going to the golf course there or the casino is essentially the food where a mosquito would take its blood. So it will be very difficult to tackle the issue. What we fear will be happening is that due to the complaints from the visitors and the tourists, because you can imagine you've just spent €500 million investment and people are coming there to gamble and they are getting bitten by mosquitoes, what we fear is that there will be increased pressure to drain the surrounding marshes rather than...
But they're a protected area.
They are protected area, and of course it would be illegal to do so, to even touch the wetlands or the salt marsh. But again, things change in a day or in a year, as we've seen, if there's the political pressure and if the excuses of economic development and job creation are favoring and always overriding the natural protection, then we fear you might be getting this result.
Draining the marshes would be, apart from the fact that it would be illegal as things stand at the moment, it's not the answer. Do you think that the more likely scenario would be that the developers and so on would use chemical means to target the mosquitoes? And if they did, what impact might that have on the bird population and, well, the flora and fauna generally of the area?
They are not allowed to use chemicals. It's illegal to use chemicals in any wetland in the world because they are very toxic to the aquatic environment. So if anyone is doing it, and obviously they might be doing it, but it would be illegal and it would be detrimental to the whole flora and fauna there, both to the mosquitoes but also to any species that you would find there because of the toxicity, and even to the aquifers. Imagine these chemicals getting into the aquifer, it would be even impossible to ever clean it up.
It's very depressing, Tassos. What's to be done about this? I mean, the groundbreaking has gone ahead, which means the building is going to go ahead, and presumably the casino is going to open in 2 or 3 years' time.
It is very depressing, even for us as we are seeing it, because we are also not just worried about the casino, but we are worried about what the casino will bring as future developments. We've already heard of applications being put in to develop further villas to the south of the casino, so that's even closer to the wetlands.
And the mosquitoes.
And the mosquitoes. And these people would be spending even more time. If you have a villa, you want to be outdoors, so they would be getting bitten all the time by the mosquitoes. We know there is a golf course to the west of the casino, which has been approved since 2010. It's a very old story. We know there is future plans and developments all across the northern peninsula and even in the south. So essentially, we are seeing the whole Agrodiri Peninsula, which is the most important wetland on the island and one of the most important bird areas. We are seeing it being fragmented or degraded with all these plants, and this is what we always call about salami slicing, which essentially we are assessing plants and developments individually, but we are not looking the overall impact that this, if they are put together, would have to a protected area like the Agrodiri. As BirdLife Cyprus, obviously we will keep lobbying for its protection. We are thinking of having a more targeted campaign for the whole peninsula for the people to understand what's coming ahead, because even the chief executives in the inauguration ceremony, the setting of the stone, they were saying about we would not hesitate to expand further into non-gaming development. And of course we are making contact and keeping cooperation with the competent authorities to see what compensations and mitigation measures, if can be put in place to at least protect the most important areas in the Agrodiri Peninsula.
That is Tassos Shalis from BirdLife Cyprus. Their campaigns manager looks like he's got a busy time ahead of him.
Keep up to date with events in Cyprus and around the world with the Cyprus News Digest.
This coming weekend at the Mall of Cyprus in Nicosia, there'll be an information booth about the upcoming Cyprus Cybersecurity Challenge. To find out what that is and how young people who take part in that may be selected for the European Cybersecurity Challenge later this year, joining us from the Cyprus Computer Society is one of the mentors, and his name is Dimitris Papapetrou. Dimitri, tell us first of all about last year's event, because I think you did this last year. How did our young Cypriot hackers do?
Last year, the event took place in November in Malaga, Spain. It was the first time that we took part in this kind of competition. Our expectations were not really high. We didn't have any past experiences in regards to cybersecurity challenges, but despite all the difficulties, we managed to get the 5th place. It was a very big event for Cyprus because we usually end up in the last places, and out of the, I believe, 15 countries, we managed to get a really good position.
Okay, that's great, but that also means, I guess, that as you approach this year's competition, you have a much better idea of what is needed and what is expected, so you'll be able to be even more refined, if you like, in your selection of the people who come and visit you this weekend.
Exactly. Last year, we didn't organize any local, national competitions in order to select the candidates of the Cyprus team. Whereas this year there's going to be a national challenge which will take place sometime in July, early July I would say. And anyone who is interested and would like to participate is free to register on the Cyprus Computer Society webpage. In addition to this, we will host an event at the Mall of Cyprus for anyone who wants to watch hackers, how they operate in real life, not in movies.
A lot of people actually aren't sure what hacking is, and this is very much aimed at young hackers aged between 14 and 25. So tell us, at the mall on Sunday, you'll have people there on their computers doing what exactly?
The hackers that will be at the Mall of Cyprus, they will try to solve similar challenges as in the European Cybersecurity Challenge competition, or the similar ones that will be hosted in the national competition.
But what are these challenges? What do they have to do?
They have to break the security controls of systems, websites, and discover flags that are well hidden within those systems in order to prove that they have actually managed to break in, yeah.
So whose websites do you use, or do you put up special websites specifically for this?
Yes, we put up special vulnerable systems that are specifically designed depending on the type of challenge. And we test candidates, how skillful they are in different domains of information security, how well they can penetrate a website, how well they can penetrate a Windows system or a server or any kind of system that a hacker may be interested.
Now, this is all very much in the news at the moment. We've just had Bill Clinton publishing, I think, a book, or certainly he's co-written a book about cybersecurity, and he said that he thinks that that is the new global threat. So how does that play into this sort of competition? Are we looking to find young Cypriots who may be able, as they get older and into the career world, to actually do this sort of work to protect Cyprus, for example, and government websites?
Exactly. There is a shortage of skillful penetration testers. This is the professional hackers, let's say, the good guys. There's a skills shortage of 2 million information security specialists worldwide at the moment. So the demand is a lot higher than the supply at the moment, and this is the reason the European Cybersecurity Challenge was created, to identify young talented people and give them the opportunity to meet other skillful professionals, help them to get into the right path, into ethical hacking, not to become bad guys,
the
but
black hats or the white
exactly.
hats. What about the problem we have in that, although there are in some of our schools computer lessons, it's nowhere near the sort of IT education that kids in other European countries have? Can you do anything about that?
We cannot at the moment do anything about that as the Cyprus Computer Society or hackers, but people that would like to become hackers, they tend to study these kinds of things on their own and their own free time. They don't need anyone to hold their hand and guide them through the hacking process.
Yes, but it would be a much quicker way of finding those missing millions if we had basic computer skills taught in our schools from primary school.
Exactly. Basic skills. There are other countries that went one step beyond that. For example, in Israel, they have specific lessons in the afternoon after the school is closed for any children that are interested in learning information security. So they start educating their potential white hat hackers from an early age. So instead of trying to find someone that has spent some time learning hacking at home and getting him into the Cyprus national team, Israel has already trained their potential candidates and they are ready-made when they leave school. So the level of expertise is much higher at an earlier age in other countries. So we need to
speed up the process.
Catch up with the others.
Well, if you think you'd like to find out more about hacking, or indeed if you're in that age group of 14 to 25 and you'd like to have a go at hacking, then you should either head down to the Mall of Cyprus on Sunday and see the Cyprus Computer Society stand there, or go to their website, which is www.ccs.org.cy. You'll find the details there, and you might even make the Cyber Security Challenge in Cyprus. If you're successful there, it could be a trip to London in the autumn for the European Cyber Security Challenge.
In collaboration with the Cyprus Mail, this is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Charalambous.
The biggest achievement of Crime Stoppers has been the ability of the public to be able to give information about crime anonymously.
There's no way I could have kept prostituting without the drugs. There's no way I could have had my body used like a public toilet, because that's actually what prostitution is.
And then the fourth series I started 3 days after I'd won the Oscar, so the whole of the Monarch of the Glen experience was all interplatted with the Gosford Park Oscar experience.
I was working with Ronnie James Dio, and David was going to reform Whitesnake in 2003.
Cyprus was chosen because Cyprus is a stable, peaceful and secure place.
We have to really look closely. What are we doing with children? What are we doing with adolescents? And what are we doing with adults that can help them move into a more literate situation?
The ones that I'm proudest of are the ones that were true discoveries, where we found something we didn't know existed.
A high-level 2-day conference on cybercrime, trends and threats, European and international dimensions, was held in Nicosia on Monday and Tuesday this week. One of the speakers on cybercrime capacity building was Marianna Kikou of the Cybercrime Programme Office at the Directorate General of Human Rights and the Rule of Law at the Council of Europe. When I met up with her at the conference, I asked her what exactly she meant by capacity building in terms of cybercrime.
Capacity building in general, you can look at it in a larger sense, so it would be a totality of activities or an intervention that would assist a state, its government or relevant criminal justice authorities in building its capacities and skills to fight cybercrime. Of course, I'm speaking from the perspective of the Cybercrime Program Office that runs quite a number of projects all over the world, and literally all over the world, not only in Europe, but also Latin America, Asia, Pacific and Africa. where we support governments in putting in place effective legislation to fight cybercrime. That legislation being in accordance with the Budapest Convention, that is the Convention on Cybercrime of the Council of Europe, that puts together minimum standards on criminalizing a specific conduct, which is cybercrime, which puts together a list of procedural powers that the law enforcement needs for effective investigation of cybercrime, and of course a list of international cooperation tools, because cybercrime by its nature is transborder, so international cooperation is almost always a must in investigation. Either the perpetrator in a different country or the victims of the infrastructure or the data needed for the investigation is held abroad.
You mentioned data, and I was going to ask you how far the data protection legislation that has come into force is going to impact the ability of investigators to investigate cybercrime and get the necessary data to prosecute.
Well, the Budapest Convention itself has Article 15, which put in place or conditions that list of procedural powers that I was mentioning, conditions it or limits it with certain safeguards, including data protection safeguards, but also other safeguards that derive from rule of law, protection of human rights in general. There could be some, of course, I wouldn't say that limitations, or if you talk about data protection, some of some elements will be more difficult, and I'm talking about, for example, the WHOIS database that was till now online, and where investigators could, if they needed an IP, it was an open source, they could verify that very easily. Now WHOIS will go down. And it's not that the access will be prohibited, it will be a layered access, and this would make things a bit more difficult rather
and
than...
slower, presumably, because that's the other thing, isn't it? The speed with which cybercrime...
Yes, because when you have an open source, basically it's there and you can use to verify it. When it's a layered access, that means either you need to get subscribe information. Am I really truly talking about an IP address? I'm not talking about traffic data or content data that is more sensitive, and it was always under greater protection, higher protection. Yes, it will slow down because now access will be layered. That means that investigators would have go to a prosecutor or court, depending on the jurisdiction, to basically access data that was once open source.
So how does that impact this capacity building? Do you have to have all these different nations? You said they needed to cooperate, but they need to cooperate on many different levels now, don't they?
Yes, they do need to cooperate. I mean, things will be a bit more difficult, but that doesn't mean that cybercrime will not be investigated in an effective way. There are many other tools for investigations, and actually the Cybercrime Convention Committee works on the second protocol to the Budapest Convention that would facilitate access to data in the cloud, and aims also at streamlining mutual legal assistance, which still remains the main tool in obtaining evidence from abroad.
And that is Mariana Kiku, who is with the Directorate General of Human Rights and the Rule of Law at the Council of Europe. And we'll be hearing from some of the other speakers that I met up with at that cybercrime conference in upcoming editions of the Cyprus News Digest. Well, that about wraps up this edition of the Cyprus News Digest. Many thanks for your company. Hope you'll join me next week. Till we meet again, take care and God bless. Bye-bye now.